All right, welcome everyone. It's so powerful to see all of you here today. I hope you can find your seats. We are also live streaming to hundreds of people across the country, all who have their eyes on the important events here in Michigan. My name is Emily MacArthur. I'm a socialist and a member of Workers Strike Back. Workers Strike Back stands against the genocidal war on Gaza for a permanent ceasefire. We're fighting for an end to the brutal occupation and all US military funding to Israel. We are an independent movement organizing on the streets and in our workplaces against the billionaires and their political servants. All of us have watched in horror as the Israeli state has waged a horrific genocidal war on Palestine. Carpet bombing from above, bulldozing communities, and ensuring the death of thousands through starvation and untreated disease. I felt moved into action. And I can tell from the reaction I've gotten from meeting hundreds of you over the last few days that you are also hungry to get active, to organize, to end the genocide. So welcome. I am so proud to be here today with Abandon Harris and the Jill Stein campaign, here in the battleground state of Michigan, where hundreds of thousands of Arab American voters have an opportunity to send a powerful message to the two pro-war corporate parties and their warmonger candidates, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Throughout the rally today, we'll be chanting in both Arabic and English, and we do have chant leaders who are here today. And it is my honor to introduce my co-host, Farah Khan, the co-chair of Abandon Harris, Michigan.
Good afternoon and welcome everyone. Assalamu alaikum and blessings be upon everybody. I'm the co-chair of Abandon Harris, Michigan. The Abandon Harris campaign claims to unite and mobilize people of conscience into a national movement, grounded in grassroots organizing, political lobbying, public advocacy, and voter mobilization. Our goal is to transform these voices into a powerful voting bloc that cannot be ignored. Like all of you, we were compelled to act as the Israeli state escalated its horrific war, expanding from Gaza to all of Palestine, Lebanon, and Yemen. Just days ago, right-wing President Netanyahu ominously declared, "There is nowhere in the Middle East Israel cannot reach." The scale of these atrocities is unimaginable. The Israeli state has dropped over 70,000 tons of bombs on Gaza alone. That's more than the bombs that then was dropped on Nagasaki combined. In 1 year, the genocide has claimed the lives of 2,100 Palestinian babies under the age of 2. Did they not deserve to live? Despite clear and urgent appeals from the community and the widespread opposition to the genocide in Gaza, the Biden-Harris administration continues to offer unwavering support, both in rhetoric and nearly $50 billion in aid last year alone. The Harris-Walz campaign has pledged to continue this unconditional backing. Trump is not an alternative. Not only is he running within the party responsible for the illegal war in Iraq, but he also enabled the inhumane Muslim travel ban. Furthermore, his policy stance on the Middle East is clear. It is up to Israel, quote unquote, it is up to Israel to determine what they needed for their own safety, which translates to more of the same, genocide. Furthermore, he also said in his first debate, the presidential debate, abetting the criminal state of Israel to finish the job. We must build a true alternative to both Harris and Trump. That's why we are here today, and why we are thrilled to be joined by Jill Stein. It is also important to be standing here alongside workers. Strike back.
Workers Strike Back and Abandon Harris have been working in parallel for the last year. While this horrific genocide has escalated, we have moved into action, fighting for ceasefire resolutions, protesting, organizing to get out the anti-war vote, first in the primaries and now in the general election. Our organizations were able to connect at the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, protesting the coronation of Vice Warmonger-in-Chief Kamala Harris. And we immediately started working together to deliver the Democratic Party war machine a major blow by building the strongest anti-genocide vote for Jill Stein. Jill Stein is the strongest anti-war candidate running. She's on the ballot in 47 states due to energetic volunteers, and every vote for her is a vote against the genocide. But even more than that, it is a step towards the desperately needed anti-war party that working people and youth deserve, a step forward for the anti-war movement. And of those 47 states where Jill Stein is on the ballot, Michigan is the single most important. Most states are basically considered decided, and we want to fight for strong votes for Jill Stein there as well. But in Michigan, every single vote will be fought over. But neither major party feels that they need to answer for this horrific war on Gaza. But the Arab American community in Michigan can show them how wrong they are. No Harris, no Trump, no votes for genocide. No Harris, no Trump, no votes for genocide. No Harris, no Trump, no votes for genocide.
I would like to welcome our first speaker, the anti-war activist Rania Masri. Please give her a big round of applause, please.
It's been 1 year of the most live-streamed, documented genocide in human history. 1 year of a genocide in which we continue to have to show fellow Americans that we bleed, that we cry, and that we have the right to resist. 1 year. Between 368,000 to 552,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza in the past 1 year. And I say between because we do not know how many Palestinians have been killed with US-funded bombs, and we won't know until the bombs stop and we're able to find the remains of our loved ones amidst the rubble. We do know certain things. We know that Israel has used white phosphorus. We know that Israel has used bunker buster bombs against tents. We know that Israel very recently actually put explosives in cans that look like food cans, so that this morning, 3 beloved Palestinian children were seriously injured when they thought they were getting food. The horror of Zionists and their funders seems to have no end. They continue to find new ways to terrorize us. And in Lebanon, several weeks ago, they booby-trapped thousands of electronic communication devices, injuring 4,000 people, serious injuries to the face, to the eyes, to the hands. Thus far in Lebanon, more than 2,000 people have been killed by Israel. More than 2,000. And the massacres continue while Israel is fueled by the impunity that they have gotten from their crimes in Gaza, fueled by the impunity they have gotten for 76 years worth of crimes against Palestinians and Lebanese and Syrians. Fueled by those. More than a week ago, with the green light from Biden and Harris, with the green light from Biden and Harris, Israel demolished an entire block in Dahi, an entire block, 4 apartment buildings. Israel used 3 times as many bunker buster bombs in that one attack, 3 times as many than the United States used in the entirety of its 2003 invasion of Iraq. 3 times as many bunker buster bombs were used in one attack by Israel. Why? Not only because of their impunity, but because of the level of fear that Israel has for our resistance in Lebanon. They used that amount of bomb to assassinate a beloved, to assassinate Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, and they thought that if they would kill our leader, that the resistance would crumble. Quite the contrary. Quite the contrary. Every day, the Lebanese resistance breaks more records in their divine defense of Lebanon from the Israeli invasion. An Israeli invasion that got the green light from Biden and Harris. An Israeli invasion that got that green light. They thought that by killing many leaders in Hezbollah, they would kill the resistance, just like they thought that 1 year of a genocide in Gaza would kill the resistance in Palestine, but they have been proven faulty in both. 75% of Hamas's military capabilities are still functioning, and our men in Gaza, at a distance of 0 with slippers and homemade weapons, are still beating the Israeli cowards in the battlefield. To our men in Gaza and in Lebanon, and not just in Gaza, but in the West Bank and in Iraq and in Yemen, to our men I say, العز رفيقك والأمل وبمثلك يفتخر الوطن لن نيأس لو طال الزمن فجدار الخوف بك يهدم. It is with our resistance that we have achieved our liberation in Lebanon, and we will achieve our liberation in Palestine. The walls of fear have been demolished. All that Israel knows how to do is to kill. That is all they know how to do. All that we know how to do is to be ready to lay our lives down to defend. There is a world of difference between us. And we know in the United States what that world of difference means to us here. It means that while we get our strength from the glorious divine men in Lebanon and Palestine and Yemen, they cannot scare us with 4 years of Donald Trump. They cannot come to our community and tell us that Kamala Harris is the lesser of the 2 evils. They cannot do that. Because when they say that, they are telling us that genocide is the lesser evil. And if they consider genocide to be the lesser evil, then by God, what is the greater evil? Or maybe they just think genocide of our people is the lesser evil because they think we are lesser than. Either way, we say no to them. And it is critical that Michigan says no to them. Because let me tell you, all of the United States is looking to Michigan. I come from the swing state of North Carolina, and every day in North Carolina, we have this discussion. What will Michigan do? What will Michigan do? And let me tell you, some of my family members are really worried. They are really worried that maybe in Michigan, what would happen to us if Kamala Harris wins? If Kamala Harris wins in Michigan, the sign to the rest of the country is that we are nothing, that our blood has no value. But we know more than that. So it is incumbent that the swing state of Michigan swing away from Kamala Harris. The Biden administration lied. The Biden administration knew that Palestinians in Gaza were being denied food by the Israelis, and they lied so they can continue to send weapons. And they sent 500 airplanes of weapons. They sent 300 tons of weapons. They sent $30 billion of weapons. The Biden administration gave the green light to the invasion of Lebanon and the destruction of Beirut. And the Democratic candidate had the audacity to say, and I quote, "The expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States." They call the invasion of other countries an expansion. A State Department official said, if there's never any consequence for doing it, why stop doing it? So we tell them there are consequences. We tell them there are consequences. We give them the consequences. We give them the consequences by telling the Vice President Harris that we will, as we say in Arabic, راح نسقط الرئيس. راح نسقط لهم الرئيس. And it starts in Michigan. It starts in Michigan. And for us to quantify our strength, it becomes incumbent for us to be clear. Not only are we saying no to the genocider, no to the racist representation of the carceral state and the military-industrial complex, no to the Zionist, we are saying yes to someone else. And it becomes incumbent upon us to vote no to Harris and to vote yes to the alternative, which is Jill Stein. I gotta say this clearly. We have to make sure to get out the vote. We have to make sure to get out the vote. Malcolm X reminded us, we are not outnumbered, we are simply out-organized. So between now and early voting, which is just in a week, we gotta get out the vote. Make sure everyone gets off their couches and gets to the polling booth and votes for Jill Stein. And we continue that until November 5th. So that when the state of Michigan defeats Kamala Harris, and when other swing states swing away from blue and swing toward justice, we can claim credit. I want to claim that credit, and I want to claim that credit and say 1%, 2%, 3%, 5% of us voted for Jill Stein. And after, in November, when we are claiming that credit, we then sit and we get our inspiration again from our leaders in Lebanon and Palestine, and we get the inspiration to continue the fight on November 6th by making sure that we do not cow down to the Democrats or the Republicans, by making sure that we work to liberate the United States of America from the criminal duopoly. Let us promise to do that.
Hey, hey, ho, ho, Harris and Trump have got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, Harris and Trump have got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, Harris and Trump have got to go. Ho, ho, Harris and Trump have got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, Harris and Trump have got to go. Thank you so much to Rania. I think that was a powerful kickoff. What do you think? And it is correct to emphasize the powerful role that the Arab American community has to play here in Michigan. I think as a member of Workers Strike Back, an important constituency that we also need to bring along in the fight against war and in the fight to build a new party is the labor movement. I know I, for one, was extremely moved to see UAW, which is a very prominent union here in Michigan. There's two, union halls in walking distance from my house, come out in December of last year, clearly calling for a ceasefire. That was a powerful statement that led the way, and now a majority of union members in this country are members of unions who have passed a ceasefire resolution. But unfortunately, in complete contradiction to that powerful statement, that brave statement of calling for a ceasefire, that very same union, UAW, and many other unions immediately turned around and endorsed warmonger-in-chief Joe Biden when he was running for re-election. That's right, absolutely shameful. And then in turn, when Kamala Harris, who has of course been the second in command to this genocide, was coronated as a replacement to Biden, they then immediately put no challenge to her, saying, where do you stand on the question of ceasefire? Where do you stand on the question of ending arms sales to Israel? Instead, they immediately gave their stamp of approval and called on their members to vote for genocide. Do we support that? No. That's right. But thankfully, unions are democratic institutions, and just because the leadership makes a decision does not mean that the rank and file of that union agree with that decision. And we have seen through Worker Strike Back organizing across the country of rank and file UAW members who are advocating in their union to rescind the endorsement of Kamala Harris. And it is my honor to introduce one of those brave organizers to you today, United Auto Workers Union member and Worker Strike Back member, Jessie Kelly. Please give her a warm welcome.
Hi, my name is Jessie Kelly, and I'm a UAW Local 160 skilled trades worker at the General Motors Warren Tech Center here in Michigan. Some of you might know the UAW a little bit better because of last year's stand-up strike, where we took on large greed-fueled companies and reminded the working class that if they stand together and fight, they can win. We fought because we're sick and tired of being exploited and ignored. We are done being told that we should be grateful for the crumbs while we are living in perpetual debt and assisting in a filthy economy. The cost of living has skyrocketed, and most of us are scraping to get by, while these companies we work for boast about their record-breaking profits and obscene wealth made by top executives and major shareholders. We wanted to end the days of workers being told that they were essential during a pandemic and then dispendable when they demand a decent standard of living at a bargaining table. We need an economy that works for everyone, not just the rich in Wall Street. This is personal for me because I sacrificed years of my life being a temporary employee for General Motors, going into debt every paycheck to pay for my childcare, but being forced to keep working because I needed health insurance for my son. This is the reality for most of us today. We are drowning in debt and having to choose between a roof over our head or food on our tables, all while the very people we elect to represent us are pushing a capitalistic class agenda and are bought by the rich and spend time on national TV arguing over who's the real millionaire. Right now, as we stand here today, there are more billionaires in the US than ever. Yet hundreds of cities across America are struggling with cuts to funding for the very things that we need, like public schools, affordable housing, public transportation, healthcare, and social services. Trump and the Republican Party are openly anti-worker and anti-union. Trump has boasted about his union-busting policies, and he's a billionaire himself and represents the interests of the billionaire class. But Harris isn't fighting for our best interests either. It's almost more insulting for Harris to claim she's pro-union while never actually doing anything that uplifts the working class. We know that CEOs of most big corporations and the ultra-wealthy are falling all over themselves to support Harris. She's racking in gigantic amounts of campaign money by wealthy donors. The Biden-Harris administration also cut the expansion to child tax credits. They broke their promise for a $15 an hour minimum wage. They broke their promise of canceling student loan debts, and they broke the railroad workers' strike. So I ask you, how pro-union are they really? They are also complacent in genocide. sending tens of billions of our tax dollars to carry out crimes against humanity in Palestine. I am proud of the UAW. I am proud of the UAW rank and file members who spoke out against the war in Gaza. And because of that and the pressure of millions of working class Americans, the leadership of the UAW and other unions called and passed a ceasefire resolution. But a ceasefire call wasn't enough. We kept the pressure on. And now the UAW and 7 other unions are publicly calling on Biden to immediately halt military aid to Israel. We know that the Israeli state wouldn't be able to conduct war for even one day if the US government withdrew the political and military support. But Harris has declared that she will not stop the shipments to Israel. So why is our leadership of our union backing someone who does not stand with our demands? Yeah, we must make these demands a red line and remain unwavering. As an auto worker and a union member, I'm proud to be voting for Jill Stein, the best anti-war pro-worker candidate running this year. We need to do this as a step towards building our own anti-war working class party. I'm proud to stand with Workers Strike Back, who organized this rally and has been organizing alongside the Bannon Harris and Jill Stein campaign, and with workers like myself. I urge people to join Workers Strike Back so we can organize together against this genocide and for good wages, for childcare, and for housing. I stand in solidarity with the Boeing machinist workers on the West Coast who are currently on strike and the longshore workers on the East Coast who recently just postponed their strike but are still actively fighting for a fair deal. I also stand in solidarity and heartbreak with my Eaton Aerospace UAW brothers and sisters at Local 475 in Jackson, Michigan, who are holding the line, their strike line is hard still, after the tragedy struck and we lost one of our own when a car ran into our picket line last week. I want to take this opportunity to urge my brothers and sisters in the Longshore Union to stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people in Gaza, West Bank, and Lebanon, and refuse to ship military containers and vehicles. An injury to one is an injury to all. We need international working class solidarity to end the war on Gaza, and we need the American labor movement to lead that way. Thank you all for being here today and being in this fight with me.
أحد 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 أحد. In the scorching heat of Mecca, a lone voice, again and again, relentless, piercing through the air, undeniable to the ear. Ahadun, drenched in sand, dragged through the alleyways, volume increasing, decreasing. Again and again, a single word of truth. the story of Bilal told to our children again and again, a man who believed that at every moment he had, a breath of air, a heartbeat, was a moment to speak the truth, to pursue justice. And here we are, seeking justice, speaking truth. I've been traveling with my research assistant, Khalid, from Minnesota to Arizona, from Michigan to Pennsylvania. We found ourselves on Delaware pavement, a few feet away from the president's home, honking cars, erected tents, people of conscience, Muslim and non-Muslim, Jewish Americans, Hindus, Christians, together speaking out in this era of genocide. Every day, we find ourselves a moment in history for which we must respond. And these youth, a few feet away from the house of the president, sought to respond to the despicable acts committed by this administration, the vice president, at the hands of the president. Honking cars, the bullhorn was given over to me. Mustering courage, resisting tears, I brought the bullhorn, grabbed it, positioned it before my mouth and began. My name is Hassan Abdussalam. I'm a professor of human rights strategy and movement making. And in 2022, I was conducting research on the occupation in occupied Palestine. And there, we learned of stories unimaginable. The story of a Sayyid who feared and worried about his father, who was imprisoned because of his political beliefs. Of Sheikh Sami in his thawb, who walked the streets of Silwan, calling people to good, not to take drugs, and to go uphill there, a few feet away, to pray in Al-Aqsa. And the story of Brother Faris, uncertain, worried, under the golden domes of Jerusalem, confused, wanting to affect change, to change the prospect of an ummah he saw in disaster and occupation. Worried in his early 20s, entrapped again and again by police. During that time, we felt we had to give our advice. And as a strategist, we advised to come to a single place at the center of Silwan, erected tents, our family members, and to peacefully protest, never to leave, to replicate the events of Tahrir Square in Egypt in 2011, to invite the media and let the world know about the brutality exercised by a state so brilliant in its marketing, its capacity to hide autocracy, its attacks, and still be seen as a light of liberal righteousness in a world that knows nothing of the perpetual acts by forces in every corner who entrap, kill, demolish homes, amputate bodies. But the Israeli forces would have none of that. After a year strategizing on the enclave of Al-Aqsa, under 100 formation and army within the very mosque of women and men wearing shoes. After 10 months walking towards, on December 1st, the Bab al-Silsila at Al-Aqsa, a little after 6 p.m., a man who sees me and hates me greatly as I walked in and out with the youth, spotted me approaching the fence, and at every door, at every gate, there are forces. He tripped, delicious, excited, his face, unlike before, heading towards me. I was anxious. His gesture, I stopped. Scrolling through his phone, there was my face. And there began a chapter of research unimaginable, an ethnography from hell. My hands were handcuffed, my legs handcuffed, the metallic coiling, digging into my skin, my nerves burning, burdening my every step, ordered into the corridors. Forces all around me, confused, speaking to me in 3 languages, Hebrew, Arabic, English, stripped naked, paraded through the old city, thrown into a van, taken to the infamous Mescobeya prison, processed, blindfolded, handcuffed, claustrophobic, laces out, dragged impatiently as I tiptoed in humiliation to my dungeon cell. Poorly lit, confined spaces, my company, a toilet hole in the ground, its stench evident, scent profuse, my heart rate increasing, the clanking of the keys behind the 2 metallic doors. They've come back. My interrogators return. Why are you here? What does it mean that you're ending the occupation? Brother Faris is behind these walls. Sheikh Sami is behind these walls, humiliating me that the youth that were working with us, strategizing, who are seeking to peacefully protest, to speak the truth, were also being detained. Detainment, torture. One guard, as I was handcuffed to a chair, looking right in my face, said that he cleans himself each day with bleach because he talks to scum like me, less than spit. The humiliation extraordinary. The thought, teaching human rights, perceiving yourself as courageous, but I tremble before you in weakness and cowardice. The fear and anxiety of the torture, and the clock ticking as they entered the rooms with their wicked smiles, promising I would never leave, imprisoned forever. And people come to us and ask us, how could you have done this? You have degrees, you're a PhD, you're a professor, Dr. Hassan. How could you have spoken out? Why did you speak out? Are you a fool? Why did you speak out? How could you speak out? And the real question, my dear brothers and sisters, is how can we not speak out? In an era of genocide, the small responsibility we have is to speak the truth. Our forefathers and foremothers before, when they shouted in Mecca, there was only a handful in the Ummah. And now each of you lay credit to a man who sought justice, to end tribal genocide, Bilal, to pursue goodness in an era of corruption. And now we are multitudes. Where are the people of truth? Those who wish to sacrifice for those oppressed. Today, we find ourselves 30 days away from the most important election in the history of America, in the history of the world. A genocide unparalleled. I happen to be one of the 2 founders of a movement, Abandon Biden, Abandon Harris, and we are asking everyone to vote, not for the despicable candidates who sit atop the 2 major political parties, but to vote for the courageous, those who already have been arrested because of the genocide, those who have sacrificed tirelessly, even though they have no reason to, those like Jill Stein. The goal is to punish the vice president, to show that she was defeated because of the genocide and by power. Never again allowing genocide to be on the ballot again. We follow in the footsteps of Prophet Moses in the 17th verse of the 28th surah in Surah Al-Qasas, who said, Ya Allah, you have favored me and I will never side with the criminals. Dear brothers and sisters, never side with the criminals. The ones who promise you health care, social security, forgiveness of student debt, fighting climate change, and yet they shed blood across the planet. Remember the narration of the Prophet, peace be upon him, who said the greatest martyr is Hamza, and the one who follows is a man who spoke out against an unjust ruler and was killed. Know that you will not be killed. You will not be tortured. You will not hear the clanking of the keys or be slapped. At every turn you answer a question truthfully. Your family will not be ripped from the basements, and you will not be bombarded, and despite being killed, still declared terrorists. Prophet Moses was said to be told by God to speak gently to the Pharaoh. Walk gently behind the curtain at the ballot box and speak the truth against the pharaohs in the White House. Remember the narration of the Prophet, peace be upon him, that when one part of humanity feels pain, its entirety feels pain. If you cannot feel courage, if you don't want to vote, think of the pain. Historians will say that the greatest hit that ever came to this ummah happened this past year. What does that say of the leaders who perpetrate such vile, vicious torture? When I was going through the courts, speaking out behind bars, I met again Brother Faris. There he was, anxiously pacing back and forth, back and forth. I was seated in front of him, feigning calmness to bring solace. And he asked me a question. What would you do if you go back to America? And I didn't think I'd ever go back. The interrogators would come in and say, you're never returning. But I answered, I said, I would speak out. And the most extraordinary thing happened. Despite his torture, despite early 20s, married, worried about his family, I would speak out. A huge smile appeared on his face, instinctive, reflexive. So what brought him pleasure is that you now here would hear his story, that you're worrying for him despite not knowing him, that he doesn't expect from us to end the bombings, the munitions, to make the propaganda vanish, but that you are doing everything you can. That prospect, that knowledge brings a joy to someone who is being tortured. An ummah that together laughs and together cries, that together fasts, that together votes. Voting is but a word of truth, of justice. We follow the light of Martin Luther King. Often remembered, the Martin Luther King who sang "We Shall Overcome" on bridges in Selma, who wrote letters in a Birmingham jail. But we remember the Martin Luther King who spoke out against the Vietnam War and broad American international intervention. Now is the time of a new chapter of civil rights that we inaugurate here with Jill Stein, Workers Strike Back, Abandon Harris, knowing that history will remember this day. Remember, 53 years from now, when your great-great-grandchildren take the course, 21st century Islamic history, 21st century American history, and the teachers come in to the classroom and they ask about this period, and they go to page 73 and they see November 5th, 2024. There, when they see the images, everyone will know that the heroes were those who came out and voted for Jill Stein. And they will be puzzled by the ones who didn't, who voted for a genocider, who voted for violence, tens of thousands of tons upon an innocent people on the verge of disintegration. Now is the time to vote as your great-great-grandchildren would wish that you vote. Never side with the criminals. A single voice. Victory is so needed. An immediate win by defeating the vice president. A political earthquake. Muslim Americans and their allies might be the most powerful Muslims on the planet. If you don't want to do it, if you don't want to vote, vote for Brother Faris. And let the smile continue. I invite you to hold my hand and come into my prison and look at the face of Brother Faris smiling. He wasn't smiling to me, but to each of you, in the knowledge that his smile, his voice, his worry would reach you. And all that's asked is that you speak a word that will take a fraction of a moment, a vote that only you and yourself and your Lord would know at the ballot box. A single word. Victory is but a word, a moment of truth and justice, a vote, a voice, a single word. Ahadun ahad. Ahadun ahad. Ahadun ahad.
Thank you, Brother Hassan. If you all are moved by Dr. Hassan's speech, I urge you all to please join our movement. We need committed, energetic, and passionate people, friends like you. Please visit our website, abandonharris.com. We need volunteers, donors, and friends, so please go and visit abandonharris.com. And now it's a pleasure to introduce a friend, a dynamic individual who wears many hats as a community activist, professor, lawyer, and a comedian. His unique blend of passion for justice and humor has made him a powerful voice in both the classroom and on stage. A voice from Palestine, and he lives right here in Dearborn. Please join me in welcoming Amr Zahir.
Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. So happy to have all of you here today in Dearborn. One of the most beautiful things about this movement in this room is that it includes all kinds of people. Religious people, people of faith, people of little faith, people of no faith, people of all around the world. That's what you see when you see around you in this room. The diversity of this movement is the most beautiful thing about it. And I'm happy to have you all here in Dearborn today, where I think I'm the only person on the stage from Dearborn, so welcome to our city. Welcome. Did you say no? Yeah. Welcome to our city. What, was there someone else from Dearborn up here? I think I'm the only one. And welcome to our city. Welcome to the neighborhood that is going to decide this election in November. This is not complicated, everybody. If you vote for Trump, you are voting for genocide. If you vote for Kamala Harris, you are voting for genocide. There's one person on this ballot who says no to the genocide, and that is Dr. Jill Stein. This is not complicated. They say that I am not a mental health professional, but I feel like the Israelis engage in a lot of projection. They say when we say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, is genocidal. Now, when we say Palestine will be free, we mean free for who? Everybody. But maybe they think when we say it is genocidal because when they say it, it is genocidal. I'm not a mental health professional, but that sounds like projection to me. They say that we come from different places. They say, oh, you guys have last names that say you're Egyptian and Kurdish. That's right. Palestine has been a place where people have wanted to come for 3,000 years. We know that as Palestinians and Arabs. That is nothing that is weird to us. That's why when European Jews came 100 years ago, we didn't think anything of it. Now, when you start kicking out people and stealing their land, then we have a problem. But maybe they're making us feel bad about being from somewhere else because they know that they're from somewhere else. And so we have to make sure that we keep telling the truth. What we have here today is the truth, and we're standing in a community that are the direct victims of Israel since 1948. I had 2 shows this weekend that I canceled so I could be here in our community in Dearborn. I was supposed to be in Boston yesterday and Washington, D.C. today. A show of 500 people in Washington, D.C. that I decided to postpone because I wasn't into it and because we had to be here in our community. Because all this week and just yesterday in a cafe, I spoke to some young woman. I asked her how she's doing. She said, we can't find my uncle. Raise your hand if you have been affected by Israel and everything they've been doing for the past 75 years directly by your family. Look at the hands that go up in the room. See? We are the real direct victims of it. And that's how I know that we're going to win. Not only in November, but we are going to liberate Palestine from the river to the sea. And I know we're going to win because I lived with my grandmother. For those, Arabs, we bring our grandmothers and grandfathers into our houses. We don't put them into retirement homes or anything like that. They come and live with us. We're not the only people who do it. That's the way it works And after my grandfather died, my father's father, my grandmother, my dad's mother came and lived in our house for 25 years. Dr. Stein, let me say that again in case. My dad's mom lived with my mom for 25 years. To all the married women in the room, let me say that again. My dad's mom lived with my mom for 25 years, so she's going to heaven. But my grandmother was a victim of the 1948 ethnic cleansing of Jaffa. And she had her own bedroom in our house. We had 7 people in our house, 4 bedrooms. Me and my brother were roommates. My sisters were roommates. My parents were roommates. And my grandmother had her own room. And me and my brother, every night, we would go down and see her after dinner because she would give us these beautiful chocolate cupcakes that my mother would never give to us. You know, your grandmother always gives you stuff your mom doesn't give you, especially if she's your dad's mother because she hates your mother. And every night we would get these, but not before we paid a price. And the price was, can you please grab your kids? Please, 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 please. Just if they need to go outside for a second, that's okay. It's a very safe neighborhood. This is the safest neighborhood in Dearborn, yeah. Maybe it's because they heard Kamala Harris's name too many times, but still. And me and my brother would visit her every night because she would give us these cupcakes and we would get them from her, but not before we had to pay a price. And the price was listening to her stories from 1948. She would lay on her bed every night and she would hold up 2 fingers and she would say in Arabic, they told us we could come back in 2 weeks and we're still waiting. And so we know as Palestinians, as Lebanese, as Arabs, that we have the truth. Because I lived with the truth and my grandmother was the truth. And that is what is going to take us through to liberate Palestine and to be the reason that Michigan is historic in this election this year. And so as I leave the stage, I want you all to look at the person next to you and tell them, thank you for coming today. Now look at the person to your right and your left and tell them, I'm proud of you. Now look at the person to the right and your left and tell them, I love you. I love you. Tell them again. Because we are a movement full of love. The biggest lie they say about us is that we are people who hate. Do we hate people for who they are? Do we hate people for who they are? We hate occupation, we hate apartheid, we hate injustice, we hate racism, but we don't hate anybody for who they are. We are people full of love. And this is a room full of people who love the truth. And this neighborhood right here, I encourage you all to visit this neighborhood when you get out, because it's 90% Arabs living around here, and they're going to be the ones that all vote for Dr. Jill Stein and make sure that we are creating history this year. Thank you. I'll see all of you soon. Bye-bye.
Let's give him another round of applause. No Harris, no Trump, no vote for genocide. No Harris, no Trump, no vote for genocide. No Harris, no Trump, no vote for genocide. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Harris and Trump has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Harris and Trump has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Harris and Trump have got to go. You guys give yourself a round of applause too. And now it's a pleasure to introduce, I lost my notes. All right, so brothers and sisters, it's a privilege to introduce Rizwan Samad, an inspiring activist and an integral part of our organization in Seattle. His dedication to our cause and his tireless efforts in advocating for justice and equality have had a profound impact on our community. He has also played a very important role in getting a ceasefire resolution passed in Seattle, Washington City Council. Please join me in welcoming the passionate and committed Rizwan Samad to the stage. Rizwan Samad.
Wow. These two dynamic speakers, my two brothers and two sisters, they just moved me. So please give a big hand of applause to those four previous speakers who spoke before me. My name is Rizwan Samad, and I'm here from Seattle. I was long-term Democrat, but now I abandoned my party and I joined the abandoned Harris movement. And it was plain and simple. I cannot tolerate this genocide that's going on today. And this presidential candidate, Kamala Harris, has no platform. Just keep saying that I'm not Trump. That's not good enough for voters to support her. I just wanna, for the moment, I want to bring your attention what's going on in America. Recent hurricane attacks in North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida hit really hard. And over 200 people already died. Thousands of people lost their homes, and hundreds of them are still missing. But the sad thing is, the FEMA just announced that they are running out of the money to support their own beloved American citizen in America to help them. But the irony is that they're sending tens of billions of dollars to Israel to commit genocide against the people of Gaza and Lebanon. Shame on them. They don't have the money for the people in this country, but they have billions and billions to sending arms for committing genocide. How can anyone, how can any American, I'm not talking to Muslims, I'm talking to all Americans. How can you tolerate this administration when they cannot take care of their own, but they have enough to send arms to kill innocent women and children? My dear brothers and sisters, they're not only killing, just they are leveling the whole city. Gaza used to have 5 beautiful universities. They all demolished. All the hospitals are gone. They did not just kill 40 or 50,000 people. There are more than 150,000 buried alive under the rubble. Nobody was able to even pray for them. And now they're bombarding Lebanon. Your very own from the Dearborn city, Ahmed Jamal, who was visiting Lebanon, died 2 days ago. Enough is enough. And then this woman comes to Michigan and tell the Arabs and Muslims to vote for her. You know, devil do devil's work. Albert Einstein said many years ago, 70 years ago, it was true then and it was true now. The world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who watch them without doing anything. So I want to appeal to you, all the Michigan people, including Arab and Muslims and all the general people. Don't watch. Become activists. And do not vote for the devil. Not even the lesser devil. Devils are devil. My humble request, I came all the way from Seattle to give a special message to my Muslim and Arab brothers. Please hear me out. I'm a Muslim, but I'm not an Arab. But I'm proud to be Muslim. My message to all the Muslims and Arab: please do not use the ink of innocent people's blood and tick mark on kamala. If you do that, then I don't even know what to say to you. You will stab on the back of those martyrs. You will stab on the back of those mothers who lost little babies. You will stab on the back of the children who became orphaned. And please don't come out and tell them that you are Muslim and Arab. again. Do not do that. And if you do that, don't tell that you are Arab or Muslim, because you're going to victimize us again and again. I don't have much word for those who are supporting and endorsing Kamala or Trump. Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying. This organization, Engage, I live in the Northwest. I never heard of it before. And I'm an activist. They are capuch with this Democratic Party. You know, I get to know that there are Muslim Zionists out there. There are Muslim Zionists out there. And I call them Muslim Zionists because they just want to coexist. They're not Muslim if they're Zionists. Great, thank you for correcting me. You know, that's I'm not going to say, but I will call them Zionists. Just like I call ISIS that they are not Muslim. So shame on Engage, who are promoting and telling Muslims that vote for Kamala Harris. She's no good. I've been following her for almost over 20 years. When she was a DA in California, she put more African American into prison than any other DA. So don't get into this trap that she's a black and she's minority. We know President Obama, he was black. His middle name is Hussein. And I'm ashamed to say I endorsed it and supported him. But Tony Blinken, the devil, he was a deputy state attorney. He architected and planned and killed over 2 million Muslims in Syria and Libya. Shame on them. And now he got rewarded to become a Secretary of State. How can somebody who has a dual citizenship as an Israeli and American and represent America? Of course not. They have only one agenda: to kill as many Muslims and Arab as possible. So, before I leave this stage, I want to appeal to all the Muslim and Arabs, and especially in Michigan State, please do not vote for her. Because if you're Muslim or oppressed, the people who oppressed and the people who support oppressor in the day of judgment, all their good deeds will be taken away, no matter how pious they are. So, my brother and sister, spread the word and all over Michigan, no to Kamala, no to Trump, and vote for Stein. Thank you. Thank you.
So in my community, we have this saying of preaching to the choir. I don't know if that's a saying here, but I think, it feels in this room that there is a lot of support for Jill Stein. Am I getting that right? So then I think it is not just our job to go vote. That's the bare minimum, right? It is to talk to our community members, to go outside of the masjid, to go outside of the community centers, to go outside of the grocery stores, to go to the universities and say, are you against this genocide? Then how can you vote for the two candidates of genocide? Are you aware that there's an anti-war candidate on the ballot, right? because so many people are not aware, because the corporate media blacks out independent anti-war candidates like Jill Stein. And so hopefully all of you got one of these when you came in. We're going to get to a sign up, but I just want you to really think about when you are moved by something that a speaker on this stage says, when you want to clap and you feel a tingle of agreement in your chest, think, what shifts can I go out and talk to members of my community and make sure that we register hundreds of thousands of anti-genocide votes in the state of Michigan, and we send a powerful message to the pro-genocide Democratic Party and Kamala Harris. Brother Hassan, he spoke to the potential for a political earthquake as a result of costing Kamala Harris the state of Michigan. And I want to say, I absolutely agree. And I think that that kind of political earthquake is absolutely possible. I was witness to it in Seattle as I was part of a movement with City Council member Shama Sawant. But that kind of movement, it takes ordinary people turning out and getting organized and talking to their sisters and their brothers and their aunts and their uncles and their classmates and getting active in that struggle, right? We cannot be passive in this battle. In terms of fighting against, fighting for concrete wins for ordinary people and standing in opposition to the pro-war, anti-worker party of the Democrats, I don't know that there's anyone I know with more experience than City Council member Shama Sawant. She spent 10 years as the lone independent candidate on the Seattle City Council. But within the first 6 months of being elected in Seattle, she not only she won the first in the nation $15 an hour minimum wage. But we didn't stop there. That $15 an hour minimum wage is now today nearly $20 an hour in Seattle. And you don't have to be a nuclear scientist to see that $20 is a lot closer to the $25 an hour minimum wage we need in this country than the $7.25 minimum wage that Joe Biden has overseen. I think that's yet another broken promise to working class people. And we've seen this kind of broken promise time and time again. Sister Farah spoke to how Brother Rizwan played a role in bringing forward and winning a ceasefire resolution in October of last year in Seattle. That resolution would not have been won if it was not for Socialist City Council member Shama Sawant fighting to get it on the floor. For the other city council members, all Democrats, they said, this isn't a local issue. They ignored it for weeks as bombs rained down on Gaza and the whole world stood in horror and turned out, right? Thousands on the streets in London and New York, I'm sure in Michigan, in Seattle. And they said, not a local issue. We packed City Hall and Councilmember Shama Sawant brought forward that resolution, and fought tooth and nail and passed it. So it is my honor to talk about how do we take electoral politics and build a broader anti-war movement, a broader workers movement. So please welcome Socialist and City Council member Shama Sawant and member of Workers Strike Back.
Assalamu alaikum to those who are here in person and the thousands who are and will be watching remotely. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are overseeing the wholesale destruction of Gaza. According to the statistical methodology of the Lancet, 340,000 people are now dead, directly or indirectly, as a result of the war, 14% of the population. Entire bloodlines are being wiped out. There are not sufficient words in the English language to describe the horrors being carried out by Israeli and US imperialism in Gaza and the West Bank. And now those horrors are being rained down upon Lebanon with the full enthusiastic backing of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. President Biden said, quote, "Make no mistake, the United States is fully fully supportive of Israel, end quote. Biden says he is fully backing the river of Palestinian blood by the Israeli state. The Democrats apparently cannot back the genocide enough. Harris has repeatedly asserted that this apocalyptic policy is hers as well. She said that under her leadership, US imperialism will have the most lethal fighting force in the world. Since she was crowned as a Democratic candidate, she has, alongside Biden, given tens of billions more dollars in military funding to Israel. Without that funding, this genocidal ethnic cleansing project could not continue. Harris's running mate, Tim Walz, or America's dad, as they like to call him, informed us last week that the expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity. Walz and the Democrats have since tried to say that he misspoke. But you do not get to claim you misspoke when what you said is literally describing the bloody policy of US imperialism over 75 years. And what Walz said does get to the heart of the matter. It is US imperialism's ironclad support, partnership in reality, in this brutal occupation and colonial expansion that has led to this moment. The Democratic Party needs a new name. It is really the genocidal party, the anti-democratic party, the anti-worker party, the party of endless war, of climate destruction, of ethnic cleansing, the party of the warmongering billionaire class. If we don't stop the Democrats, their actions will lead to wider regional and even global war. But we as working people have power also. We have the power to take a historic stand against this and potentially to defeat this warmongering candidate Kamala Harris. Our slogan must be, as others have said, no votes for genocide. But we will have to fight to make this happen. There are many forces against us. One of these, sadly, is the leadership of Uncommitted. My organization, Workers Strike Back, has a broadcast program called On Strike. This week, we interviewed a ceasefire delegate to the Democratic National Convention, Ruba Ayub, on our show. Ruba spoke about how the uncommitted leadership is betraying the movement, how at the DNC they tried to police ceasefire delegates wanting to end the genocide, how they politically harassed them, how they even physically hit these ceasefire delegates with campaign signs. Ruba said that Uncommitted's endorsement of Harris was, I'm quoting her, bullshit. That was exactly right. And she said, they have someone that looks like us and they sell us out. That is exactly what they did. It's very important that Biden Harris has done the opposite, that they are fighting instead to defeat Harris, not just symbolically, but in reality, by fighting for the maximum number of votes to defeat her in the key swing states, with this state, Michigan, being the most important of all. And Workers Strike Back is committed to achieving that goal. Harris and the Democrats need our votes to win this election. They need this city. They need this state. We need to deny them those votes. This is the only language they understand, and the Democrats must be made to pay the price for being the party of genocide. Because if genocide is not a red line, then there is no red line. We need to end all support for the Democratic Party, and in reality, that should have ended a long time ago. The Democrats were the party of slavery, of the slave owners. That is their history. And it is both Democrats and Republicans that are the parties of war and of the billionaire class. Both parties, Democrats and Republicans, have backed coup after violent coup against democratically elected governments, particularly those backed by movements of working people and the labor movement standing up against US imperialism. This included the coup in Iran in 1954, the CIA's removal of Mohammad Mossadegh, and the coup against Salvador Allende and the workers' movement in Chile in South America in 1973. From the beginning, Israel's very existence has come about in order to serve as the most important outpost of American capitalism to oversee their claim to the wealth of the oil-rich Middle East and as a projection of their political and military power in the region. And both the Republican and the Democratic parties serve the interests of US capitalism. They have an unshakable bipartisan agreement on unconditional support to the Israeli state. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are in competition not to show who is more humane, but in trying to outdo each other in their loyalty to Israel. We as working people, regardless of our religion or national origin, have many other reasons, in fact, in addition to this, to not support the Democrats or the Republicans. These two parties are also the parties that have fought tooth and nail against universal health care in the United States. After making many promises in the context of the 2016 and 2020 campaigns of Bernie Sanders, they abandoned those promises on public health care, on the $15 an hour minimum wage, on canceling student debt, and on banning fracking. Kamala Harris has now made it clear that she would continue to back the genocide to the hilt, that she would oppose Medicare for all. She opposes the ban on fracking. This party does not represent working people. It will never represent us. We need to break the two-party system. And we need to begin that by breaking this election for the Democrats in Michigan. No votes for genocide, no votes for Harris, no votes for Trump. But let's also be clear, not voting at all is not a strategy. We need every possible vote for anti-war, pro-worker candidate Jill Stein. Because every vote for Jill Stein is a vote that it gets recorded against genocide. At this moment, though, many who would vote for Jill Stein in Michigan don't know who Jill Stein is. This is the single biggest danger we face right now in Dearborn and Michigan when we have to soberly take our tasks on hand. Myself and my fellow Worker Strike Back members have talked to hundreds of people this week in Michigan, at the mosques, on street corners, outside coffee houses. Many had not heard of Jill Stein before. Many who are angry about the genocide and are planning to not vote at all in this election because they don't know that an anti-war candidate is on the ballot. The vast majority of these people can be won over to vote for Jill Stein. We told them Jill Stein is against the war, against all military funding for Israel, against the occupation, and that she is serious. She personally got arrested for protesting against the war on Gaza. But here's the problem. We have only 4 weeks left, probably less than that. We are playing catch up. We need a systematic, relentless effort to get out the vote. Today, before you leave, and when I say you, I mean every single person here has this responsibility on your shoulders. Before you leave, we need everyone here to sign up to do this task. Sign up for the get out the vote shifts that Emily talked about. I was elected and re-elected as a socialist city council member in Seattle. In my election campaigns, where we won 4 out of 4 elections. We defeated Amazon's record-breaking donations. We defeated the Democratic Party. In those campaigns, we tabled all over our district We knocked on hundreds of thousands of doors systematically. We talked to everyone we could reach, and most we talked to multiple times. We fought to turn out every single one of our supporters to vote. That is what we need here. The election has already started. Absentee ballots have been sent. We need to catch up rapidly. We need everyone here to get active. We need to be clear about what our goals are. We are not in a position to win the White House. But we do have a real opportunity to win something historic. We could deny Kamala Harris the state of Michigan. And the polls show that most likely Harris cannot win the election without Michigan. Now, if we manage to accomplish this, it would be absolutely historic. By voting for a presidential candidate who is against the war, and by rejecting a presidential candidate, and by defeating her because she is supporting the genocide. That must be our number one goal. What are our other goals? To use this campaign to build our movement, to build the anti-war movement, to build the workers' movement beyond this election. In all of this, we should also be clear, Trump and the Republicans are absolutely no alternative. Voting for Trump also will not send a message that we oppose the genocide, just like not voting will also not send a message. Trump and the Republicans are fully on board with this genocidal war. Trump says he will finish the job. We need a new major party for working people, an anti-war party. I spoke about slavery earlier and the Democratic Party's history as the party of slave owners. Historically, there were two small parties, two abolitionist parties that played a historic role. These parties prepared the way for the destruction of the grotesque institution of slavery in the United States, the Liberty Party and the Free Soil Party. Neither of them ever held federal power, never held the White House, but they played a crucial role in ending slavery forever. We need a new party for working people, and organizations like Abandon Harris, the Green Party, and Workers Strike Back have an important role to play in this. We need to defeat Harris in Michigan, we need to defeat the Democrats, and we need to break the two-party system, because whether Harris or Trump win in November, the genocide will continue. The brutal occupation will continue unless our movement stops it once and for all. What would such a party look like? First, we should be clear, the new party that we need is not just electoral. It's not just about running candidates, or even mainly about running candidates. That is completely insufficient. It needs to be a party rooted in mass movements, a party that does not organize protests and rallies is not going to change anything. A party that is not fighting inside the workplaces, on the picket lines, organizing for mass strikes and shutting down the profit machine of the bosses, that party will not bring the fundamental change we need. The new party we need will need to be rooted in the anti-war movement, the workers' movement, a party that uses every means at its disposal in the fight for fundamental radical change. The party we need will have a clear platform, and it will hold its leadership accountable to that program. The party we need would have thrown AOC and other squad members out a long time ago. That party would have unendorsed them for betraying their promises to working people. Because it is far too easy, and I say this with an enormous amount of having personally seen how politics works inside the capitalist machine. It is far too easy for new elected representatives, even well-meaning ones, to be absorbed by the political system and then justify it and rationalize it. And it will not matter if, it would be better to not run for one single elected office than to elect representatives who betray the movement and are not held accountable. And it will not matter if the new elected representatives are all from the Arab or Muslim community either. Congress member Rashida Tlaib was among those who silenced the rank and file uncommitted delegates. She also took abandoned Harris signs and threw them in the trash, saying abandoned Harris had gone too far. As Ruba Ayub said about the uncommitted leadership, they have someone who looks like us and they sell us out, and also shame on M-Gage. And so in launching a new party, we need to be clear what it is about and what it's not. It needs to be accountable to working people, to oppressed people. Its representatives should be required to accept only the average worker's wage. This is what I did in Seattle. As an elected representative of working people, that is what I did. City council members in Seattle have the second highest city council salary in the nation, second to LA. There, council members pay themselves a lavish wage in Seattle of over $140,000. I took home $50,000 and after taxes, donated the rest to social movements and the workers' movement. We need to fight against careerism. No one from our movement should be allowed to run for office to make a career for themselves. They cannot be allowed to run only to then say they need to make peace with the Democrats. No, the party we build needs to run candidates who, when they win elected offices, use their positions to be a disturber of the political peace, not to be a cog in the machinery of the ruling class. If we can defeat Harris in Michigan, that would be a political earthquake. If out of that we can run anti-war candidates as part of a new anti-war party of the kind I described, that would be a political earthquake on a much larger scale. Towards that end, Workers' Strike Back is calling for a mass organizing conference next February in Seattle on February 22nd to build on the momentum of this campaign. We need hundreds, thousands there. What is happening in the Middle East is not only about individual politicians, it's about capitalism. Capitalism is inherently predatory and racist and apocalyptic. It is a system of war and inequality and climate disaster. It is a system owned and controlled by the billionaires. From 2020 to 2024, 5 billion people have become poorer, while the world's 5 richest men have more than doubled their fortunes at the rate of $14 million per hour. These billionaires, this tiny sliver of the human population, the only way for them to maintain these mind-boggling levels of inequality never before achieved in human history is to divide us, to divide the working class in every way possible. Which is why an international working class and labor-led anti-war movement is so crucial. Why it's crucial that we build the wider working class opposition to this war. Kamala Harris has the billionaires on her side. They are euphoric about her. They support her because they recognize that she is an unapologetic fighter for their interests, their greed. And so is Trump. But ultimately, Harris is a more consistently reliable and controllable tool for billionaire interests. The future we face under the capitalist system is one of wider and wider war, of increasing brutality. Even the continuation of human civilization is under threat. We can see that with the growing climate disasters. Just in this last week, we saw that with Hurricane Helene, with the massive destruction it has brought. We need a fundamentally different kind of society. We need a society run by working people in which the major corporations are owned and democratically controlled by workers. A society in which the economy is democratically planned and in a rational manner in the interest of our needs and the needs of the planet, not billionaire greed. Right now, our task is to get out the vote for Jill Stein, systematically and relentlessly against genocide, against the billionaire agenda. Here in Michigan, most of all, Michigan is ground zero for the making of history today. It is ground zero to punish Kamala Harris and defeat her and send a message that no candidate, no party that supports genocide will have our votes. But my sisters and brothers, it is easier said than done. This is a tall order. Defeating Harris in Michigan is an achievable objective, but it is going to be very, very hard. We have less than a month left. And that is why we need to get out in action and get out the vote. It requires all of us. And never forget for 1 second, the line of history runs through Michigan. Harris and the Democrats have crossed that line, the line of genocide. Let's punish them. Let's defeat them. Solidarity. No Harris, no Trump, no vote for genocide. 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 Woo! So, my dear brothers and sisters, now is the time to make a difference. Your generosity today can transform the lives of the oppressed in Gaza. To support those in need, we need funds. Here to strengthen our movement for our future and the future of Palestine. Every dollar you give is a step towards justice, empowerment, and hope. Together, we have the power to create lasting change. So let's act and let's give. For us to build the most serious anti-war vote, we definitely need resources. Please join me in welcoming Brother Justin Spence to help raise some funds.
Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dustin Spence. I'm a member of Workers Strike Back, and I've got one thing to say to Kamala Harris, to Donald Trump, to Joe Biden, and the billionaire warmongers that are backing all of them. We are fighting back. We're drawing a line in the sand, and we will not support these genocidal candidates. Are you ready to fight? Are you ready to fight? So we are fighting for every vote to defeat Kamala Harris in the state of Michigan. If we succeed, we can send a historic message that if you support genocide, you will lose. There will be no votes for genocide, right? No votes for genocide. We refuse to support Harris or Trump, refuse to support the Democratic or Republican parties. We are fighting alongside the abandoned Harris movement to win the biggest possible vote for Jill Stein, the strongest anti-war, pro-worker candidate in this election. So building our movement, winning this critical vote against genocide, maintaining our movement through to November and beyond takes time, it takes resources, and yes, it takes money. And so today, I'm going to ask for a donation. It takes serious resources to build a Get Out the Vote campaign. And so we are setting a target today to raise $10,000. to continue building this movement across the country. Now, in a little bit, I'm going to call out some numbers. If you're here in person, raise your hand when I get to a number that you can give. Let's just test it out. Can you raise your hands? Great. Everyone knows how to do it. We're good. What we're going to do is have you raise your hand when I get to a number that you can give, and then a volunteer from our donation team will come over and process your donation here on the spot. Now, if you're watching on the live stream, there's a donation in the chat. And live streamers, you should say in the chat when you hear a number that you can donate so we all feel a sense of the momentum together. Now, think of a number that you can give. Think about what's at stake with crisis after crisis, hammering working people right now in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Lebanon, right here in Michigan. Think about a number that you can give, and then think about if you can give just a little bit more to continue the fight, to end this genocidal war, to build the anti-war movement and the workers' movement for a new mass political party that represents us and the biggest possible vote for Jill Stein in November. So now we've got quite a fight ahead of us. And to get in the proper mindset for what it's going to take to win this fight, a supporter, Ragav Kausik, who played a big role in winning the Seattle City Council resolution calling for a permanent ceasefire and an end to arms sales to Israel in Seattle. Ragav is watching on the live stream right now and has pledged to donate $3,000. Is there anyone here who can match him? Is there anyone who can match Ragav's $3,000 donation to end the genocide? I'll give it a moment. Okay. It's a big ask. We have a big task ahead of us, and I think we all recognize that. So today we've been talking about what working people can do to end Netanyahu's genocidal war. Both parties of big business have shown their determination to back the Israeli state to the hilt. The Biden-Harris administration recently approved a record-setting $23 billion on top of the billions that have already been sent to fund the Israeli military. And despite the fact that over 60% of Americans want an immediate ceasefire and an end to U.S. military aid to Israel, thousands have marched and have protested and joined the encampments against the U.S. support for the genocide. So who here can donate $1,000 or more to continue building the anti-war movement? $1,000. Right there, right here in the road. Everybody give a round of applause. Thank you so much. Keep your hand raised. Keep your hand raised. Right there. Thank you so much. Is there anyone who can match that? $1,000. Okay. Earlier today, we heard from Jesse about the important role that the labor movement has to play in ending the war. In fact, we launched Workers Strike Back to be a home for people who want to fight for the militant union movement that we need, one that's willing to use its full power to fight for the interests of working people here in the US and internationally, because our interests are actually aligned with each other and not with the bosses of any nation. We've been helping Workers Strike Back members to pass resolutions in their unions calling for a ceasefire, as well as helping them fight for resolutions calling on their unions to rescind their endorsements of Harris and to stop pouring members' dues money into Democratic campaigns. So who here can give $500 or more to help build a fighting labor movement? Got one. We've got two. We've got three. Keep those hands up. We've got four. And we've got $2,000 donations on the live stream. Thank you so much. And if you haven't had someone come around to you, keep your hand up so we make sure we see right up here in front, two right up here in front for $500. Thank you so much, guys. And right down here. And Justin, right down here in the second row. There we go. Okay, so we've just heard from Shama Sawant, who served as an independent socialist elected representative of working people on the Seattle City Council for a decade. During the time she was in office, Seattle's working people won victory after victory. The first $15 an hour minimum wage in a major city, renters' rights, including eviction protections, and 6 months' notice for rent increases, and a new tax on Amazon and big business that's used to fund affordable housing. Now, collectively, these victories represent a transfer of wealth of billions of dollars from the bosses to workers and renters struggling to make ends meet. We founded Workers Strike Back to spread across the country the fighting class struggle approach that has succeeded in winning so many victories for working people in Seattle. We need to build in every city where working people who want to replicate that example can learn from the lessons we've built up from those 10 years of experience, and to get organized to launch their own fightbacks against their bosses. So who here can give $250 or more to spread those lessons to working and young people across the country? Got one. We've got two. Amazing. And please keep your hands up until someone comes to you. Great, great. And of course, Jill Stein herself is here today. Everyone who is voting to cast a vote for Jill Stein is voting that puts pressure on the political establishment in the US to win the war. Every vote for Harris or Trump undermines that pressure. Workers Strike Back and abandoned Harris members will be campaigning between now and November, setting up tables on street corners, knocking on doors, phone banking, organizing rallies to win every possible vote for Jill Stein. And this is the most immediate, concrete task we need to fund. So who here can give $100 so that we can continue fighting for the biggest possible vote for Jill Stein? Oh, look at this. Great, great. There are some in the back as well. Keep those hands up if you haven't had someone come over to you. Amazing. And there are ones here in the front row. Thank you so much, everybody. Now, before I run through these last few numbers, I'm going to ask you to consider making a donation to Workers Strike Back on a monthly basis. This makes you a member of Workers Strike Back. You support the work of our organization, and you're able to fully participate in our democratic process, like the vote that we took at a national Zoom conference in July to formally endorse Jill Stein. So if you want to become a member, making monthly donations, when you raise your hand, one of us can help you to process your monthly contribution online. So Workers Strike Back has collected well over 10,000 individual donations from thousands of donors in 46 states, in Washington, D.C., in Puerto Rico, and our message has even resonated internationally with donations from Canada, Mexico, Nigeria, Hong Kong, New Zealand, Germany, and Catalonia in Spain. I know that I've made a lot of big money asks here today, but every dollar really is crucial in building this movement. Every dollar goes towards making our movement stronger and making the billionaire class waste their money on losing. Building this will take thousands of people chipping in what we can. So who here today can give $50 or make a monthly contribution so that we can continue building our movement and fighting back against the billionaires? There's one over here. One over here. Over here. Yes. Okay. Amazing. 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 And right down front. Keep those hands up if you haven't had someone come over to you. Up front there, Steve. Okay. Now, one of our demands is for a $25 minimum wage. Who here can give $25 or make it monthly? There's one in the back. Amazing, amazing. Who here can give $20? Great. And last, raise your hand if you can give $15, $10, $5, or any amount. Right. Thank you to everyone who's donated today, and please, we have a small but mighty donation team that will come around to you. Keep your hand up if they haven't been around to you yet. This incredible showing is exactly what it is going to take to build the movement to end the genocide. We have 1 month to go all out and build the biggest anti-war vote for Jill Stein possible. That vote, which will require tens of thousands of Muslim Americans to turn out to punish the two warmongering parties and serve as a step towards building a new anti-war party. Thank you so much. Shukran. Solidarity.
Thank you so much, Justin. I think it's always a challenge to make the appeal when our movements are in need. And we'll be excited to announce the amount that we raised at the end of the rally. So I mentioned earlier a sign-up sheet for shifts, right? It's not just finances, but it's people power that this movement needs. Did everyone in this room get one of these sign-up sheets? And if you did not get one, can you raise your hand because you know that you need to do a shift? Can we make sure that people with their hands up get a sign-up sheet? So just to explain, we want you to be confident when you go out and talk to your neighbors. And that's why some of the biggest sign-up sheets are for training sessions and then to go out to Jummah, to Masjid, and to talk to our community members. I'm not going to be able to do a full-on sign-up sheet, but if you can make it to at least one shift between now and November 5th, let me see your hand in the air one more time. That's powerful. If you can make it to at least 3 shifts between now and November 5th in 4 weeks, let me see your hand in the air. Thank you so much to the sister here. That's so powerful. Every single one of you inspires me, and we have to be part of this movement. And if you feel, maybe I'm a little too nervous right now to do a shift, I would like for you to consider stopping by our table in the back with the Worker Strike Back signups. We have what we call a pledge card. It's for someone who's not yet ready to stand outside of the masjid or the grocery store, but they know that they need to do more than themselves just vote for Jill Stein. What is a pledge card? It's where you sit down and you think, who are 3 people who I know in my community who may sit out and not vote? Or maybe their conscience is torn and they've heard a lot of pressure about the so-called lesser evil, which we know is no such thing, no gentler genocide. And you write down those 3 people and you follow up with them, right? You give them the arguments that they need to hear because they trust you, right? And you say, hey, did you do early voting? Have you turned in your ballot yet? You be persistent and you make that difference just 3 people at a time. So even if you are still hesitating and you are not sure, I want you to make sure to sign down and at least do a pledge card so you can talk to your 3 people and we can get the most possible votes against the genocide. So there have been many powerful speakers here this afternoon. But leading up, I think, to a very important speaker who it's my honor to introduce. Jill Stein has been fighting against war, has been fighting against the undemocratic Democratic Party for a very long time. I mentioned earlier, she's on the ballot in 47 states in this country. And in some of those, yes, exactly. And that's no small task. That's the work of volunteers and supporters. But it is also fighting ruthlessly, unfortunately, against the so-called Democratic Party, who has fought to voter suppress ordinary working class people and Arab Americans who would like to vote for Jill Stein. Instead, the Democratic Party has fought to keep her name off the ballot in states like Nevada. It's shameful. But we are out organizing and fighting to let people know, to fight back against the corporate media, to cut across the media blackout, and to let people know that there is an anti-genocide candidate on the ballot that they can support. And it is my pleasure to introduce anti-war candidate, pro-worker candidate, Green Party candidate for president, Dr. Jill Stein.
We will free Palestine. Palestine will free us. We refuse to vote for Palestine. Let me fix that. We refuse to vote for genocide in Palestine. We refuse. We refuse to be talked into selling our souls, into compromising, into being talked, into affirming, endorsing, and enabling genocide. And when we are asked to please, won't we be quiet? Won't we just shut up and sit down? Won't we just be good little boys and girls? Because truly the Democratic Party owns our votes. They own Muslim votes, they own Black votes, they own youth votes, they own so-called liberal votes. But they don't. They have to earn our votes. Any politician who tells you that they own your vote does not deserve consideration of your vote. The Democrats are running scared, and they should be scared. They could fix this if they wanted. They could win back the Muslim vote. But they would rather lose the election. They would rather lose the election than stop the genocide. This is on them. They want to blame Muslims. They want to blame Greens. They want to blame socialists. They want to blame anybody, but just take the focus off of their genocide. Democrats have been losing votes profoundly. When was the big tipping point? It was actually in 2010 in the midterm elections, when they lost 1,000 seats in state legislatures across the country. They lost 64 seats in Congress. They lost 13 seats in the Senate. They lost 13 governorships. Where was the third party to blame that on? There was none. This was the after effect, basically, of the Democrats throwing working people under the bus in the bailouts for Wall Street and the big banks and the mortgage brokers in 2008. They bailed out Wall Street and they threw out the homeowners. Instead of bailing out students and families who badly need a bailout, needed it then and need it now, very much against express public opinion. The two Democratic houses of Congress and the Obama Democratic White House, a trifecta of Democrats, decided to bail out Wall Street to the tune of trillions of dollars and allow millions of homeowners basically to be thrown out and lose their life savings. So the Democrats were punished. They didn't have any third party to blame it on. There was no spoiler mythology in 2010. They just said they got shellacked and they didn't explain why. And since then, that loss has continued as the Democrats continue to lose votes because they have abandoned working people. And even going back before the Wall Street bailouts, you had Bill Clinton and NAFTA and the loss of millions and millions of workers' jobs. So the Democrats have been throwing working people under the bus for decades, actually. They have no one to blame but themselves. This is why they cannot discuss the issues, because they are not standing up for their traditional base. As Joe Biden said in the 2020 race, he said that nothing will change. He reassured the Wall Street donors that nothing will change. And indeed, what changed? Well, the billionaires got even richer. They doubled and even tripled their wealth during COVID, while ordinary working people were pushed further and further into poverty. Child poverty rates have tripled, in fact, in the last 3 years. That data just came out. Over 60% of workers are living paycheck to paycheck. Some 87 million Americans do not have adequate health insurance. Some 18 million could not afford their pharmaceuticals. Some 8 million were pushed into poverty just trying to afford their health care alone. You have young people. According to polls now, 50% are saying they are hopeless about the future, and a quarter of young people are saying that they in fact have considered harming themselves in just the last 2 weeks before that poll. So this is not a world that is working for working people in this country. And that goes hand in hand with the endless war machine, which is conducting war and genocide, specifically in the Middle East, but wars all over the world. And in fact, we have seen a whole series of catastrophic wars since 9/11 that have cost US taxpayers some $20 trillion, according to Brown University Cost of War Project. In the last year alone, these are numbers crunched by Jeffrey Sachs at the Columbia University Economics Department, that we have spent, the average American household has spent in the last year some $12,000 alone on the endless war machine. It's 50% and more of our congressional budget. This is costing us big time at home. It's impoverishing us at home. This is why they tell us we don't have the money for the victims of Hurricane Helene. This is why people are isolated. This is why people do not have the food and the water and the electricity that they need in the wake of the third worst hurricane on record in American history. This is why we are not fixing that problem at its source. We need to start phasing out fossil fuels. It's great to create renewables, but we need to end fossil fuels. And in fact, we need public ownership and public management and public accountability for the fossil fuel industry, for the banking industry. We need public banks. We need public management and ownership, likewise, of transportation. There's no way that we will have a national rail system unless we are actually coordinating that on a public basis. We also need public housing with public ownership of this critical resource. Back in the Clinton administration, they passed the so-called Fair Cloth Amendment. There was nothing fair about it. It basically prohibited any further expenditures on public housing, which is absolutely critical if we are truly going to meet the urgent and dire needs of housing in this country. Some 50% of Americans now who rent their housing are severely economically stressed, paying 30 to 50% and more of their income just to keep a roof over their heads, which doesn't leave much to pay your student loans or your car insurance or your healthcare costs and so on. We have a housing emergency in this country right now, and we can solve that right now, by the way. We can solve that by creating rent control at the federal level across the whole country to stop the gentrification, to stop the continuing displacement. We need a tenant bill of rights so that renters are not arbitrarily evicted so that their landlords can just raise the rent and gentrify the communities. In Europe, many countries are building what's now called social housing, which is mixed income, it's permanent, it's housing that's in the public domain. We need a counterweight to the private housing industry, which is driven by luxury housing and big profits for big developers. We need public housing that will meet our needs. And that housing also needs to be environmentally sound and based on renewable energy. This is why, as part of our Green New Deal, we also call for environmentally sound housing and the building of 15 million new units of affordable housing through the public housing and social housing. And by the way, on day one, we will declare a climate emergency on day one because we have a climate emergency. If Hurricane Helene did not make that point for you, then just look at the Colorado River, which is very close to shutting down. And the Colorado River supplies the water for California agriculture, which supplies half of the fruits and vegetables for the entire nation. So you think you've seen food inflation? Well, just wait until the Colorado River shuts down, which could be in the next 1 to 2 years. The Washington Post ran a headline last year calling it the doomsday scenario on the Colorado River. And we don't hear about this much from the corporate press, which is why another thing that we will do on day one, if we are so lucky as to turn the White House into a greenhouse and make the world a better place, we will also on day one undertake an antitrust lawsuit against the corporatized, consolidated media so that we can break up big media, so that the media is no longer dominated by the apologists for power. We need watchdog media, not lapdog media. It's hard to come by in this day and age. But thanks, of course, to all those who are here today to cover this event. Thank you to the press for being the exception to the rule by covering what's going on here. And let me again just say why this is so important and give a big thank you, especially to Abandon Biden, to Workers Strike Back, and to Dearborn, and to everyone who is here today. We are ground zero. We are the moral compass that is saying no to genocide, that is saying no to endless empire and its endless war machine. We are saying no to oligarchy. We are saying no to rising fascism, which is a serious problem, not just waiting for Donald Trump. It's happening right now here under Democrats with cop cities, with the war on freedom of the press, the war on freedom of speech, the war on the freedom to protest. Cop cities are happening under many Democratic municipal administrations across the country. We're seeing some 70 to 80 cop cities being built. We're seeing the training of local police now by the Israeli Defense Forces, teaching these abusive tactics for those who've been subjected to them. It's absolutely outrageous, criminal, and dehumanizing, and we need to put an end to it. Let me also say another action item on day one is to instruct the Department of Justice, our Green Department of Justice, to take AIPAC to court as a violation of the Foreign Agent Registration Act. And for those who are not convinced, I highly recommend that you see the recent investigative reporting that was done by Li Fang, formerly of The Intercept, now independent. His investigation of nonprofit organizations in this country who are actually funded by the Knesset, by money coming directly from Israel to nonprofit organizations in this country in order to change legislation, in order to change rules on campuses. Why is it that we suddenly have this ocean of repression on campuses or an ocean of anti-BDS legislation around the country? This is not coming from nowhere. This is funded. This is action on behalf of a foreign government, and the money is actually coming from the foreign government. Not necessarily all of it, but lots of it. So I recommend anybody who has questions about what's going on here to go to the source. The main thing I want to say here, I want to quote first Frederick Douglass, who said that power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. We are that demand. Don't listen to anyone who tells you to sit down and shut up and just take marching orders from the Democratic Party. And further, in the words of Alice Walker, and I paraphrase her a little bit, the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with. We have it, and what you see happening here today is part of that. This is exactly why the Democrats fought so hard to keep us off the ballot. This is why they were publicly advertising, shamefully publicly advertising for infiltrators and disruptors and spies. They were publicly advertising they did job postings for people to manage infiltrators and spies on our campaign. They also hijacked our public funding and held onto it for months while we were conducting our ballot drives. And they caused some trouble on that front. But this is why they are running scared. They are running scared because they know that their days are numbered. Their days of genocide are numbered because 68% of Americans, according to a poll done even back in November, already oppose the genocide and demand an immediate ceasefire. And since then, 61% of Americans demand an immediate weapons embargo, and we must have that. And I strongly echo the remarks made earlier today that the longshoremen really need to be urged by us to stand up and to be the source. You know, it is working people. It is working people organized at the workplace in their unions that bring our moral vision, our moral compass to the political and economic reality. And boycott, divestment, and sanctions has been enormously effective. Israel is in deep trouble on many fronts, both militarily and economically. And some of that is because of the contracts that are being canceled, most recently at MIT. MIT, the home of so much of the military-industrial complex, canceled a major contract. And this is undoubtedly why so many heads are being bashed in campuses around the country, because so many campuses are being funded by military contracts, which again gets to why we are here. We are here to create an America and a world that works for all of us. Step one is to stop the genocide. And every vote that is cast for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump or RFK, because he's still on the ballot in some states, many states actually, every vote is an endorsement of genocide. Every vote for our campaign is a shot across the bow of the empire, telling them that we are here, we are organized, we are not going away, this genocide will be ended. And again, on day one of our administration, in fact, even before day one, on the day of the election, we would pick up the phone and tell Bibi Netanyahu that his genocidal war is over. And that would not only end the genocide in Gaza, that would end the war that is expanding right now into the West Bank, into Lebanon, into Yemen, into Syria, into Iran. This is unbelievably dangerous for all of us. And all of this goes away the minute the genocide is over. It's not like it's rocket science. It's not like Biden and Harris don't have the power to end it. They claim to be working diligently night and day for a ceasefire, but actually we know from the revelations published in Politico the other day that what they're working for is the expanding war. They have been working to encourage Israel to move forward and attack Lebanon. So they are not doing what they say, but they do have the power. We must hold them to account because it's simple. It is a simple matter, as Amr was saying earlier in the program. It's not complicated. It's simple. We have the moral imperative to end this genocide. We have the popular support, and we have the means to end this genocide by picking up the phone and telling Bibi Netanyahu it's over, just as Ronald Reagan did in the 1980s. And it doesn't end there, which is why our movement does not end. Our movement does not end on election day. And whatever we do, it is a victory. It is a victory whether we are 2% or 5% or 15% or 26%, which can win a four-way race. Remember, in the last presidential election, 1 out of every 3 eligible voters voted with their feet by declining to vote for the parties of war and Wall Street being rammed down our throats back then and now as well. So 1 out of 3 voters is enough to win a 3-way and a 4-way race. So I would not accept as written in stone that we are not going to the White House. I wouldn't accept anything in this election that has defied all expectations. We aim as high as we deserve to go. And we work for that. Because winning a grassroots campaign is not rocket science. As Shama was saying earlier, it is about flyering, it is about tabling, it is about phone banking, it is about holding events. This can be done. This is not rocket science. I urge you to sign up to volunteer, both with Workers Strike Back, and we're also organizing through our campaign at Jill Stein 2024.com, and we will provide the materials and the support for us to be the foot soldiers of transformation, because it is time for transformation. We are in the position right now of deciding not only what kind of future we will have, but whether we will have a future or not. What is being normalized right now in Gaza is the torture, the daily torture and murder of children on an industrial scale. As a Jew who grew up after the genocide of Jews, shortly after the Second World War, our community was asking itself, is there life after genocide? And we discovered, in our community at least, that there is life after genocide only if we affirm that genocide will never happen again, not to anyone. And we held accountable. We held accountable for that genocide, that Holocaust, not just the perpetrators, but the bystanders. And this is happening with our tax dollars, our elected warmongers in the White House and in Congress. And on that basis, it is a moral imperative for us to stand up and do all that we can to throw the bums out now, all of the genociders, and to not vote for genocide, to make a strong vote against genocide, and for us to continue building this movement. Because when workers are getting together with Muslims, with campuses, with students, with Jews at Jewish Voice for Peace, that I will also give a shout out to, this is an unstoppable coalition. We are strong together. We are unstoppable together. Let's make it happen. Thank you all so much for being here. This is the beginning of a stronger coalition than we have ever seen in our time. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Free Palestine! Free us all. Thank you.
My dear brothers and sisters, before we leave, we are excited to announce that Wednesday, October the 9th, at 12 p.m. noon, we'll be holding a press conference at the Henry Ford Centennial Library to deliver an important message that affects our entire community. This announcement marks a pivotal moment for our cause, and we encourage all of you to join us there in hearing what promises to be a crucial and impactful update. Stay tuned for more details and mark your calendars for the significant event Wednesday at noon. The details can be found on our website, abandonedheroes.com. And while you are there, please pledge to donate from now till November, at least $10, $20, $40, $50, whatever you can comfortably do a week. And also be generous and donate to Green Party and Workers Strike Back, as we all are fighting for the same noble cause to stop this horror unleashed on our innocent brothers and sisters in Palestine, and now in Lebanon, Yemen, and Syria. So please donate generously.
Thank you so much, Farah, and thank you everyone for coming. We are going to have tables out in the parking lot, including the Jill Stein table, where they will have yard signs available for a donation. For media, we'll take interviews in front of this banner outside. If you want to follow the banner, we will have interviews out in the parking lot because we need to move out of this venue. And if you filled out a get out the vote sheet, please make sure to turn it into the Worker Strike Back table before you leave, because we have just 4 weeks to get this done.